Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you got past the post-lunch, you know, sleepy vibes, let's call them. We're going to be talking about handling 400,000 plus visitors at the world's largest physics lab. Okay. My name is Cristian Schuszter. I hope I can keep you entertained, but first we're going to start with the story, obviously, because if we don't have the story, then there's no point in actually doing the live coding for you guys. So, who am I? I'm a staff software engineer at CERN. I've been working there for around 8 years so far in different places, playing around with computer security. You might think I'm working in construction based on the helmets and so on, but no, it's just because of visiting different places where safety is first. I'm also a CERN guide, so if you ever drop by in the Geneva area, please feel free to hit me up. That will keep you interested for the rest of the talk, I hope. Now, CERN, what do people think we do? I hope any of you watch animes, otherwise this is like a completely lost joke. But okay, so the idea is everybody thinks CERN opens black holes, they recreate the beginnings of the universe, and they do some evil stuff there. A few nights ago, people were seeing what was a SpaceX rocket flying debris somewhere in the sky, and they were thinking that that might be a black hole. Could be attributed to CERN as well. However, what we actually do can be put into 4 different, let's say, areas, right? So we have discovery through science, technological innovation, diversity and bringing nations together, and inspiration and education, right? These are our missions, let's call them. And in fact, what we really do is this, right? We collide particles close to the speed of light in the center of these detectors, and we look at what comes out of it. This is the goal of CERN, right? Why do we do that? To understand how the universe came to be, what it's made out of at the most basic building blocks and so on. But it's not just that, right? What we also do is collaborate with many, many institutes across the world. Actually, most recently, we have our first American member, right? So our first country from the Americas is Brazil, that joined us as an associate member state. Usually we have countries which are in or around Europe that are part of the CERN collaborations. This means if you ever want to work at CERN, if you're part of any of those countries, then you can do so more easily than by not being part of those countries, right? So that's just taking into account, all the collaboration aspect of what we do. And my talk is actually going to be focusing on inspiration and education, mostly on a platform that we developed to handle visitors, right? So people that want to visit us. You would be surprised, but many people want to go to CERN and actually see what we're doing. We give them that possibility through whatever we've built, right? So how do we do it? With the Science Gateway. This is like a new exhibition conference center, if you want. Vox Days is happening there as well. If you ever come to Vox Days CERN, you might want to see this building because that's where the talks will happen. And what people do, they come to CERN and they open the Wi-Fi. They're like, okay, please log in, blah, 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 blah. And then they have a nice QR code where they can see all the activities happening at the Science Gateway today, right? But it's not just that. The problem is that we have people that want to come to CERN from all over the world, and who do you give priority to, right? That's the big question, because you have hundreds, thousands of people that want to book a visit more or less on the same day, right? How do you choose? Well, ideally you don't, right? You want to take this pressure away from people, and you want to automate it in some way, right? We're software engineers, I hope, most of us. And there's a lot of interest, right? So if you look at the Science Gateway, we've had 100,000 visitors since it opened in October 2023, and this was in February 2024, this photo. They got a nice puzzle or whatever as a gift because they got lucky. They were the 100,000 visitors, right? But if you look more closely, actually, like the number of people keeps increasing. The number of interest and the number of visitors increases, so we need to kind of keep up with that. In its first year of operation, we've had more than 400,000 people coming to CERN. And just a couple of days ago, there was some news about 500,000 people, okay? It's not all about numbers, of course, but That's a lot of people. And it's a lot of people to pass through just this building itself, right? Because we're kind of counting the people that want to go on these visits here. And one of the big issues that we always had to handle is the fact that we have a local area filled with high schools, middle schools, etc., right? We're exactly cut in half by the border of France and Switzerland, which means there's lots of interest from the local schools that want to visit CERN. If you give them that possibility to visit CERN, what happens with the rest of the people around the world? Well, they don't have access in a, let's say, equitable way to the same visits that the local people have, right? So these are all questions which we kind of had to answer before the opening of the Science Gateway, right? Something that we had to develop and put in place in order to satisfy all the needs for the future visitors that will come, right? And like I said, there's a lot of manual work involved, right? So people from the visit service, like let's say our business stakeholders, they came to us and they said, look, I want to allow groups to book group visits at CERN, right? So I want to come as a group of people and do something. Visit a place, do a laboratory, whatever. And I want to give them the opportunity to do that in the next 9 months and to minimize the percentage of rejections. Because before, people had to they had to request something, and then the visit service had to manually check their own internal rules to figure out, okay, so these people cannot come because there's so many groups of, let's give us an example, British people coming this week, and we don't want to allow more people from Britain to come because it's, I don't know, the school vacation, so we want more French people to come, and whatever, right? And you have lots of other constraints like that. You have how many people I want to allow per country per week, per visit language, and so on and so forth. Don't allow Mondays because we're kind of like a museum. We close on Mondays. And these might change on a short notice, all of these requirements, right? And in terms of a traditional approach, if you think about it, how would you do it? Lots of if statements, right? Like if that, if that, if that, if that, if that, if that, right? And it's probably hard to extend. It's probably hard to get it right in the first place, right? Maybe you see where I'm going with this. Maybe you don't. And then you get like a list of requirements from people that are managing labs at CERN. This means PSM means different age ranges, right? So like people which are in primary school, people which are in middle school, high school, whatever. Encode this into your code somehow and keep it extendable, because one of those P's might transform into an M or an S in the future, right? You've probably seen this in your day job in terms of requirements, things which look complicated, and your job is to keep them as extendable and simple as possible, I hope. And the user experience needs to be something like this. People come, they fill in a form, they say, look, I'm coming as a school, a group, there's that many students that want to come, they are accompanied by X adults, and so on and so forth. Depending on the type of the group, different options will appear, right? What country they come from, what language they prefer to have their tour in, average age ranges, if they're coming with their own bus or not, because we don't have that many buses. And then something churns out the numbers and figures out for the next 9 months, as soon as possible, hopefully, what slots we can give those people, right? So can we allow them to come on the 12th of April of that year? I don't know. We need to find out, right? So what are your options? Well, the first option, of course, is to just put everything into your preferred AI coding tool, right? And then tell it, please, I want to solve this problem. Please give me some amazing code. You pay a couple of $100 to OpenAI or whoever, and then suddenly you have something which might work, right? Are you proud of this solution? Is it something that you want to put in place? Maybe not. So this was not our first option, right? We move onwards. The actual real option that we considered is okay, we just pre-compute everything, meaning that we have some sort of, let's say, data warehousing solution which tells us that lab A is filled because of these reasons on that date, right? So whenever there's a new pending request that gets approved by the visit service, it goes into the DB somewhere, And we use that information to block certain slots on a day, right? Sounds simple enough. But the problem is that we need to block these slots as soon as possible. We can't really have any complex data aggregation pipelines and so on. We don't want to have eventual consistency. We want to do like a real booking system in the sense that when you click OK on the thing, nobody else can click OK a millisecond later and just manage to book something which they're not supposed to, right? So this option flies out the window. The second option is to compute possibilities on the fly, right? So you get the inputs as a JSON. I hope you can see it. So let's assume it's a JSON with all the information you've seen in the form over there, right? And then you combine the information from all of the requests which you already have registered somewhere in the DBs, right? And you apply the rules. These rules which are how many people do you want to have per country, blah, 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 blah. Of course, you could just say, okay, I'm going to put them in a list and so on. But the rules, some of the rules are really complex and they affect each other in some way, right? And they also change relatively fast. So from time to time, let's say monthly or so, there might be small tweaks, small changes to the rules in this system. Now, how many of you have played with any sort of declarative languages? Logic programming or anything like that? Okay, no. Or some of you, but not that many. So the idea is that, right, most of the code that you write is imperative. You're like focusing on how you do things. If, then, else, right? And then you actually do something. As a stupid example, we have how to bake a cake, right? So you focus on the how. You're like, okay, I'm adding flours, add eggs, etc., etc. Bake for 30 minutes, cool down the cake, wait for it to cool down, and then eat it, right? Declarative is more like you're calling the cake store, and you're like, look, these are the specs of the cake that I want to have. It needs to be a chocolate cake. It needs to have X kilos. I need it by that date. So you can set some constraints as well. Something happens. You don't know what. I mean, of course, you pay money for that, meaning computing resources in this case, right? And then you profit out of it, right? So then we get to something which people consider very old school, right? So let's talk about AI. Everybody's talking about AI nowadays, right? But this is super old school AI. This is the beginning of AI, and then it died for 20 years, and then now it came back in some other shape. So the idea was that in the past, people wanted to encode all their, all their information in a knowledge base, and you have domain experts which change that knowledge base, i.e. the rules that I've been talking about. And you have some sort of rule engine which figures out which of these rules actually apply and work on the universe of facts that you have. But the rules, they don't know about each other. They can influence each other by changing properties of your universe that they work on, right? So what you do, you just dump everything inside. You dump your data, you dump your rules, and then you wait. Eventually, it stops. You'll see in the demo that maybe it doesn't stop all the time, and that's why it's not the greatest idea all the time to use. But it's an alternative approach to just going around and like working with hard, like hard facts, hard code that you actually need to implement. And then in this use case, you're going to see it's actually, it makes sense. Now, what did we use? We're a Java shop, right? We mostly do Java in the backend and so on. What did we use? Drools. Has anybody heard about Drools? Has anybody used Drools? Okay. Way less people than actually have heard about Drools. So, Drools is exactly what I was talking about. It's a rule engine. You give it your universe of objects that you want to be talking about, and it takes your objects, it takes your user inputs, and it gives you availabilities in this case, right? So in this situation, what we want to do is just please take all the days of the next 9 months, apply all these rules to them, and give me back only the ones which actually make sense, right? This is part of a bigger umbrella project, let's call it. It's called KIE, Knowledge is Everything. That's what it's called, because everything is, well, I mean, it's a bit of a pun, right? knowledge is everything in this case, because this is what you give the system. It's your knowledge base. You input things inside it. And Drools is one of these things. You also have business process modeling tools and so on and so forth, but we're going to be focusing only on this. You can also draw some nice diagrams which actually execute as code and so on. So yeah, it's quite a deep dive if you want to go into that. But we're not going to. Now, how does it work? Let's take a simple rule. For any country that wants to visit us, I want to have at max 200 visitors per day, right? If there are more than 200 visitors already, meaning the people that I already know that are coming, plus the people that you want to come with, so let's say we're at 190 and you want to come with 24 people, this rule should not fire, right? And then everything is pattern matching. You're like, okay, I'm taking my rules, I'm taking the data that I have in the universe, and I'm pattern matching. I'm pattern matching on any output object and on any visit request input object, which is basically all the information that the people gave from the UI. And I'm checking, can you find any object in my set which has this country and is for this date, right? So q.date is basically from the input, and where the number of visitors is in that range. If so, then you can consider that in that day, at least these set of rules have passed, right? So we're structuring them on different types of rules, right? So you have country rules, if you're coming by bus, by age, by language, by so on, right? And once everything gets computed together, so once you basically aggregate all this information, you're storing this with the modify keyword. Basically, you change your universe. You can also insert new objects, which is dangerous, of course, because the moment you insert another object into your universe, it might trigger all the rules that you've already defined, right? So this is a bit scary. It's something that you really need to think about when you actually implement these things. So when all these rules have passed, if there's an object which matches this, you don't care which one, because that's the algorithm's problem. It does it for you, right? Modify and say guided tour is available for this date, right? And then you basically get the date and the time slot back with guided tour available true, right? Which populates the UI and only shows you those dates that are actually available, right? So we didn't explicitly code anything. We just put the rules in the system. We don't care in which order they execute. They're idempotent, right? So one rule doesn't necessarily affect the other in our case. And we managed to get some useful information out of that, right? And it's all pattern matching, right? It's really like you just need to take all these objects in your universe. You're going to see in the coding example, it's probably a bit more intuitive than this. But basically, you just take your objects, you define some well-known rules in your world, and anything can come out of it, right? And it's something that you can use because it's 100% pure Java. It's just a Java dependency. You just include rules as a dependency in your application, and then you use it. It's not rocket science, right? Now let's see how this actually plays into reality, right? I have a nice little application running here. It doesn't matter. It's just a Spring Boot application, super simple. Let's go over how everything is structured. So once you add your, well, let's go and see the Gradle thing. So once you add the Drools dependencies, which are these, so you have a Drools engine, you have Drools mval, you have something called KIE, Spring, whatever. Once you have all these things, you can set up your configuration to suck up all the rules that you've actually defined in your project. So how do you do this? This is quite simple. You have these KIE services which are basically initialized here. So we just create the factory, blah, blah, blah. And what we're doing, we're getting the rules from the class path. You can get them from anywhere. You can even dynamically load rules if you want and so on, right? And these are using a language called mval for Drools. That's why I had to include another dependency on this thing, right? I think you can use other things as well. And then you create this thing called a container. So the container is basically something that creates you a session, which is an instance of your universe of objects, right? So if I go to my, well, basically to my controller, I have an endpoint here called available dates, right? So I'm supposed to just get the available dates for the past, for the next 10 days, right? I'm not doing anything fancy. There are no databases involved and so on. So I'm just generating some fake data saying, okay, start with today, and for the next 10 days, just generate some random information that I have, I don't know, I times 10 visitors in the database. And this is how it should look like. So if I do this API call, basically what I get back is just a nice JSON list of like saying, look, this data is available, number of visitors 0. Okay, this is not information that you would send to your user. It's just for you guys to kind of reason about it, right? All of the dates are available except this one. Why is the 30th not available? What day is it? It's a Sunday. Okay, why does that happen? Let's have a look at our rules. So I bootstrapped a very simple rule here. There is an IntelliJ plugin for this, so basically if you guys want to write rules, you don't need to like kill yourself. But basically the idea is you can say, okay, oh, thank you for autocomplete, but no. Day is a Sunday. Red means not good, huh? So rules are just this. Then, when and then, huh? It's like your test cases, I hope. I'm matching an object from my domain, right? So you can import any Java object inside your Drools rules, right? You don't need to do anything super complex here. The quota output object could be a record. In this case, it's just a data class. Shame on me, I'm using Lombok. So I'm initiating these quota outputs with the dates. So I want to get the dates which are available for the next X days, right? So I'm just creating the empty objects. I'm putting the outputs in my universe. It's a bit weird because the thing doesn't spit out anything, right? It runs all the rules and then it stops. The moment it stops, whatever you have in your universe, you can check. You can inspect if it changed anything that you passed inside, right? And in this case, what I want to do is I pass the quota output inside there, and I say, look, I'm assuming the day is available. Prove me wrong, right? And the way this happens is like, okay, look, if I pattern match on, well, $Q is just like some notation. You can name it whatever you want. You don't need to put the dollar, but it's useful maybe. So it says here, okay, if the day of week of the date, right, because this is a Java object, it's day of week of local date, right? If the day of week of this date is in this list, or like I can just put equals, right? It's the same thing. Oh God. Then what? Then I modify this thing and I say, look, it's not available anymore. And that's done, right? So the rule executes and then it's finished, right? What happens here is basically it goes through each of these, it goes through the input objects. I need to show you actually where that happens. I'm sorry for that. In my controller, I create a new session. Oh God. I create a new session and I get the list of dates, right? So these are basically the outputs. And for each of them, I insert in the session these things as an object. I also inject a bean inside it. So this is a plain service from Spring Boot that I'm going to use later to show you some more complex use cases, right? And then what I do is I fire this, like the collection of rules basically that I want to execute that have been loaded from my class path. So these two, hello DRL and weekday DRL. We're gonna get there in a second. And that's it. So you don't know which execute. You don't explicitly know which of them will execute, but they do. And basically what happens in my controller here is that after I fire all the rules, I return the same collection that I just put inside, right? So I injected the reference of those objects that I wanted to change. I put them inside. Something happened. I returned them. this is great because I, as a, I don't know, application developer that just wants to interact with the system, I don't necessarily, so the idea about it is that you don't need to interact with the system. Why? Because the knowledge base experts will know about these rules, right? So they could explain to you why in that date something is not available. It's kind of a bridge which is supposed to be the middle point between business people and the actual developers, right? It's kind of a language that they can all potentially understand. Okay, that's cool. Let's see if we can do other things with it. So I want to use this holiday service, which potentially gives me, if it gives me an output saying if a date is a holiday or not, right? So I have decided that every Wednesday will be a holiday, right? And this is a plain Java bean. I can do whatever I want in my code. I can do some very complex checks. I can call the DB and so on, right? How would that look like in a rule? Well, rule is a holiday red, right? And then let's see if this guy spits anything useful. Oh no, Saturday and Sunday are holidays according to ChatGPT. Well, so actually what I want to do here is inject my bean in the following way. So I say, I don't know, H is matched to a holiday service object, right? An instance of the thing. Sometimes you need to put the imports manually. It doesn't necessarily like figure them out, but okay. And now that I have this holiday service, I can use its methods to do something. What do I do? How do I check if it's a holiday? I call is a holiday. So I need to pattern match on this. So I'm calling the method saying, is there any quota output that this satisfies to true? If you put a comma, it means and. So if you put a comma and you put another thing saying date equals day of week, day of week, Sunday, yeah, these are ands between each other, right? You can also put ors, but I mean, why would you ever need that, right? So we're checking if it's a holiday, and then if it's a holiday, we're modifying our object in the universe, and we're saying it's not available anymore, right? That day is not available anymore because it's a holiday, right? Duh, obviously. Now, when this runs again, does it run again? Wait a second. Right. Okay. Churning. Oh no. Oh no. Oh God. What's happening? What happens here? Well, maybe it's not the best idea ever to call a bean like that, right? Why? Because this will tell the rule engine that, hey, this rule, actually, you know what? You can execute it again because something changed in the object, and I'm not sure what this thing was exactly. So this object matches again this rule. So we created an infinite loop by very easily doing this wrong, right? So of course, what we can do here is like, instead of that, we can put this here, and then we're setting set is available if it's not a holiday. And then one way that we can actually stop this from looping is by saying no loop. Huh? Very, very nice. So what happens actually inside here is my rule executes on the object, and then it changes something. When the object changes, it will match again here. Why? Because, well, I mean, it's going again through the whole list of rules and say, do I match here? Yes, because there's no condition. There's no condition here, right? Another way of doing it is, so if I put no loop here, oh god, I killed it. Just a second, let's start it again. Oh, come on. Hey, what did I do? Oh my god, what's going on? Unable to resolve method using strict mode, blah, 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 factory, set available. Yeah, bad idea, right? To do all this kind of stuff. But, I mean, you can also just have a bean inside here, like to have just a method, right? Which says apply holiday, and then you have a quota output as an input, right? And then you say set available not is holiday of quota output dot get date, right? So basically I want to do it like that. And yeah, you see it gets very tricky when you start putting beans inside the thing. So maybe don't do it. And let's have a look at another example. So assuming that, okay, I want to have multiple conditions. You can do it like this, right? So I told you commas are basically an AND operation, right? So what happens here is basically saying, if the day of week is not a Sunday and the number of visitors is larger than 50, then it's not available, right? We don't want to log anything here. Never mind. We actually don't even need this holiday service. So what happens here is basically that all the dates which are past a certain date will not be available anymore. Why? Because so this, the 4th of April, not available, not available, not available, not available. So the last one which is available is this one. Why? Because it has 40 visitors in it, right? The other one with 50 is already, it doesn't match this rule anymore. So that's kind of a problem. Now, if you want to do another infinite loop, there's a nice code comment from former me saying, infinite loop below, uncomment at your own peril, right? So it doesn't mean you need to match on one single object from your domain, right? Assuming that in my holiday service, I want to, sorry, not in my, in my rules, I want to also insert something saying like, insert new official closure. So I don't know, CERN decided that on that date, they're going to be plus days 2. Yeah, so starting from today plus 2, there's going to be an official closure, right? Which means CERN is not open to anybody, so we need to take that into consideration as well. We need to create another rule for it. This rule will look, oh god, where am I? Did I delete it? Yeah, I did, sorry. This rule will look something like this, right? So it's saying like, look, I have a holiday service. So if this day of week is not a Sunday, because we already know that Sundays are holidays, and the number of visitors is smaller than 50, and it's not a holiday, but it's an official closure, then you set available to false again. What will this happen? I don't want to spoil it to you, but it will result in an infinite loop again. So let me just boot run the thing from the command line so you see it. Okay, let's go. Oh no, what's going on there? So it's saying, look, calling, it's basically going in a loop and saying calling is holiday, sorry for that. Calling is holiday with that parameter, and then setting available, blah, 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 whatever I put into my rambling code here. So basically this log here. You can also use this to just do logging in your Drools application. So as you can see now, it's notoriously difficult if you start mixing in beans into the whole situation. Try as much as possible, if you ever play around with these rules, to keep it to the objects themselves, right? So try to do the pattern matching on the objects, on properties of the objects, rather than going into full Java Bean mode and so on, right? Now, how would this look like in a real world example, like the one that I was talking about? Well, we can have a look at it. Prepare to have your eyes burnt. What happened? Did I just close the... Oh no, I closed the project, I'm sorry. Yeah, so using a very complex query, we just get the information of like who already took some spots from things, right? From a certain week, from a certain day, and so on and so forth. And then we're feeding it into the, ignore the dependencies missing and so on, just assume it works. So once we basically build the builder, right, that puts all the rules inside the system, all the facts, sorry, inside the system, and then we have our Drools rules grouped by, let's say, different categories that we would like to see. So for example, this country rule that I was talking to you about, for example, UK, Germany, Spain, France, and Italy, they only get maximum 5 slots per week. So if we want to have more than 5 groups of French people visiting CERN in 1 week under an organized group, not possible. Why? Because it says here, if country in that, if country in this and this lab slot which was taken fits a certain category and so on and so forth, then basically the number of available slots, a slot is 12 people, I think, is that minus whatever slots we already had taken and so on. So the idea is, this is fairly easy to test as well. We can just feed things into the system and say, look, we know that for all these inputs, we will get something which is like this out of it, right? So it's not something which is black boxish, right? The only problem that happens is it's quite hard to debug when it doesn't work, right? As you can imagine. So when it doesn't work, of course, you're going to be scratching your head and be like, which rule is firing now? I don't know. Like, you need to go into your rules, you need to start putting logs and so on, because there's no, you can't put a breakpoint in here, unfortunately, right? It's executing in a different way. The algorithm also chooses which rules execute first, depending on the way you write them. You have ways of stopping it, of cutting the execution flow and so on. But this is something that leads to a bit more cognitive overhead. It works for these complex use cases where you have very complex business logic, right? And now, if you want, I can also give you like a super small demo on the real thing, right? So let's say, look, I want to visit CERN. I'm 12 people. I have 5 people coming with me. I'm from Switzerland. Maybe Switzerland will not have any availabilities. English visit because I'm from the German side of Switzerland. No, I'm coming with my own bus. No participants under 16. Okay, and now the idea is we combine the different rules from the different systems, because there are actually like 2, let's say, subsystems, one for guided tours, one for labs. But assuming that I want to go to both, then it will need to actually go through all these permutations possible, and hopefully there's something. Oh yeah, there we go. So in August, there are a few options which span 2 days. So everything until August is taken, you know, just so you know already. If you want to do a tour, you can do it in the afternoon of the 7th, and then a lab activity on the morning of the 8th. Lab activities, unfortunately, they're only for students up to university level. So if you're coming with, let's say, more adult group, I have to break it to you, but labs are not available for you guys, only guided tours. But guided tours are pretty nice too, right? So this solves our problem. It actually solves it in a very nice way. And because it solves it in a very nice way, we tested it to see what's going on. So it's pretty solid. How do we know it's pretty solid? We wrote a paper about it. So if you want to read about it, about our booking system and how it was developed and so on based on rules, you can go to Springer and read this short paper. And in case you want to visit CERN by any chance, in 2024 it was voted among the world's greatest places to visit, right? So buytime.com. Or if you want to talk at CERN, by any chance, this is the previous poster. It's from the 15th of January this year. Next year, around those dates, maybe in February, if you're thinking about visiting Geneva by any chance, you might have a chance to talk there. We're planning to host the event there as well. Now, if you scan the QR code, you have access to the code, including the infinite loop commented out. You can play around with it, see how it works. Feel free to contact with me. And if you have any questions, now would be a good moment. And thank you very much.